While many associate the word with South Africa, apartheid is a universal legal term that refers to severe discriminatory oppression. Apartheid is also a...
Honestly, the specifics of South Africa are really different from Israel. Yeah. The specifics being that South African whites needed, like absolutely relied on and needed an enslaved and captive black population for the majority of their labor and economic production, whereas in Israel, they don't need the Palestinians. They just want them to fucking be purged, which is why Israel is worse in many respects than apartheid South Africa. Not to compare like atrocities. It's like literally thinking like, what's better, genocide or enslavement? That's like the conversation that we're having. Which is why I say that like the lucky Palestinians are the ones that are under the apartheid element of the occupation. The 2 million Palestinians that live in Gaza are not even a part of the apartheid occupation. They're just being ethnically cleansed. Slowly but surely. Come on, man. Fuck. Wait, what? Gaza is an open air prison. An open air prison that's being bombed all the time. That's why I say like the situation for Palestinians is so bad that like Jim Crow South style discrimination would be a significant improvement on their livelihoods and their lives. I just want you to imagine like how bad the situation is, that like the solution towards a one-state solution is still going to be bloody and violent and horrible. There is going to be a reconstruction ass era where in the post-abolition, like in post-abolition America, like there was a reconstruction period and there were a lot of fucking troubles led by a lot of white supremacist movements that worked to separate black people from white people, right?
Still rocking the mid part.
That is going to happen, and that is a step towards progress. If I'm looking at this from a very realistic point of view, this is a horrible take. No, it is the realistic one. I'm sorry. Actually, they do need Palestinians. A single day labor strike caused 40 million in loss to Israel. That's Palestinians living in the borders of Israel. I'm talking about like overall the entirety of the Palestinian population. They don't need as much, and they would rather completely fucking kick them out.
Crime against humanity. Its definition in the 1973 Apartheid Convention and the 1998 Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court is made up of 3 key elements: an intent to maintain the domination by one racial group over another, systematic oppression by one racial group over another, and one or more inhumane acts as part of that oppression. Persecution is a crime against humanity under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. It is made up of 2 primary elements: a discriminatory intent leading to severe deprivation of fundamental rights of a racial, ethnic, or other group. On the basis of these definitions and its research, Human Rights Watch finds that Israeli authorities are committing the crimes against humanity of apartheid and persecution. Human Rights Watch finds that the elements of the crimes come together in the occupied Palestinian territory, pursuant to an Israeli government policy to maintain the domination by Jewish Israelis over Palestinians across Israel and the occupied territory. In the occupied territory...
Why isn't the U.S. called an apartheid state? Like, Jim Crow South was closer to an apartheid state, or was technically an apartheid state, than it is now. There is a specific classification for it. Systemic discrimination in the way that it exists is not always going to be apartheid. That's why I keep saying that that's why I keep saying the lucky Palestinians that live in the West Bank, which is occupied territory, live under an apartheid state. Whereas the people in Gaza literally exist in an open air prison that is slowly but surely being cleansed.
That intent has been coupled with systematic oppression and inhumane acts committed against Palestinians living there. The Israeli government is the main authority across Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory.
Don't say lucky, my guy. They are lucky in comparison to the Palestinians living in Gaza. That's what I'm saying. That's how bad the situation is for Palestinians as a whole. How do you not understand what I'm saying?
In these areas, Israeli officials have demonstrated a discriminatory intent to maintain domination over...
Hankey's still going to be out here saying Human Rights Watch is puppies of DC? I mean, every fucking NGO is, like... But they're correct on this
the Palestinians by ensuring control over land and demographics by Jewish Israelis. Take the Jerusalem municipality as an example. The Israeli authorities' goal is to maintain a sizable Jewish majority.
By the way, this isn't like a conspiracy. This is like, we're watching the Human Rights Watch. Like, we're not watching like some fucking hyper lefty person. This is like this is the Human Rights Watch talking about Israel's like deliberate policy of maintaining a specific number of Jewish people in the West Bank. Like, this is a stated goal. Just so, please do not mistake this. That's why I think it's like fucking preposterous when people try to say like apartheid and colonizer is a terrible term to use against Israel. And secondly, it's the Israeli government's deliberate policy.
By boxing in Palestinian areas while helping predominantly Jewish areas to flourish. Israeli authorities maintain a two-tier system which...
How do you fucking describe this as anything but apartheid? When, like, Palestinians living on their own fucking land, which is, like, occupied territory, which is illegal, can't have freedom of movement. Like, their freedom is completely restricted.
Privileges Jewish Israelis over Palestinians. The means used...
They can't build anything in their own territory, dog. What is it, like, 99... Mohammed Kurd was talking about how 99% of Palestinian development in the West Bank is denied by Jewish authorities, by people who have literally openly stated, we want East Jerusalem to look like West Jerusalem, and and that like the entire Israeli project is a settler project. Like, the guy who said that sits on the fucking board that denies 99% of like Palestinian developments in occupied West Bank.
Used by Israeli authorities in the occupied territory amount to the systematic oppression needed to establish the crime of apartheid. Israeli authorities have committed a range of abuses against Palestinians. In the occupied territory, those abuses include mass land confiscation, the denial of residency rights, and the suspension of civil rights, and rise to the threshold of inhumane acts and severe abuses of the fundamental rights of Palestinians. The international community should recognize the reality on the ground for what it is and press the Israeli authorities to end apartheid and persecution.